Hi, everyone. We're going to start the session shortly. Hi, everyone. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us today for our second Statement of Purpose session for this year, for the year 2023. I'm Omara Dal. I'm working as an education advisor at the Islamabad office. We are grateful to our Fulbright alumni, Unaiza Maniar, for agreeing to do this session. If I've pronounced it right, I'm so sorry if I haven't. To do this session with us, Unaiza, who is currently working in content marketing as Associate Manager, Editing and Planning. Planning, training her team of writers to produce effective, targeted copy for websites, blogs, press releases, social media, and the like. Having graduated with a master's in publishing and writing from Emerson College, she is well aware of the process and rigor of writing. Before we start, a bit about who we are. Since 2005, Pakistan has had the world's largest Fulbright program in terms of US dollars. USEFP is the Fulbright Commission in the country. USEFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange, with offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi. USEFP's programs department administers multiple fully funded programs, including the Fulbright Scholarship. You can find information on our fully funded programs on our website, www.usefp.org. Fulbright Scholarship is a fully funded program that includes the cost of tuition, required books, airfare, accommodation, assistance with visa, monthly stipend, and health insurance. This year, our cycle has started a bit early, from January to April 12th, 2023. Also this year, the GRE minimum score has been revised for both verbal and quantitative. The minimum score is 145. Please check out our website or our Facebook page for information and updates regarding the Fulbright Scholarship. In addition to programs department, USEFP also has an advising department. USEFP is committed to merit-based selection for the Fulbright program, as well as to all aspects of diversity. Our understanding and our outstanding and accomplished candidates come from all the provinces and regions of Pakistan. About half of our selected members are women. The Fulbright Scholarship Program encourages and supports applicants with disabilities. Before I hand over the session to our speaker today, please just a reminder, put your questions in the Q&A box. It's necessary to put them only in the Q&A box and not in the chat box because it's difficult to navigate both of the places. Unaiza will decide at the end or in the middle, whenever she thinks that she wants to take some questions up, she will answer your questions as it comes to her. Unaiza, thank you so much. And over to you. You can start the session.
Thanks, Omara. Hi, guys. So I'm Unaiza Maniar. Omara did not mispronounce my name at all. So as you all know, we're going to be talking about how to write a statement of purpose today, what its importance is, who you're going to be addressing in that statement of purpose, and all of that, right? So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. I hope you all can see this presentation I've put together. Right, so this is an all-encompassing presentation I've put together so that you guys can also take notes as I speak. And obviously, as Omara said, you can send me your questions in the Q&A box. So if anything that I haven't touched upon during this presentation, I can address at the end or during, whatever I see fit. Okay, so let's start off with what a statement of purpose is, right? Now, a statement of purpose is essentially a document and it's basically read by the admissions panel, right? So that's your audience. Now, obviously, the admissions panel is a formal audience, so you need to be sure that when you are writing a statement of purpose, you need to have a formal tone, right? We'll discuss more about that as we go. The second thing about a statement of purpose is that when some people sort of get confused as to what the contents of a statement of purpose are. Also, I'll be referring to it as an SOP interchangeably. It's the same thing, right? So in it, you basically introduce yourself by highlighting the following. So you talk about your career path, you talk about your interests, you talk about your goals, you talk about your professional and academic achievements, and you also elaborate on how and why you wish to pursue a certain program, right? Because that is essentially that last point about why you want to pursue a certain program is how you basically be tying up everything else, right? Because that is your eventual goal, to let the admissions panel know, okay, this is what I want to do, and whatever decisions I've made, whatever professional achievements I've had, whatever academically, whatever I've achieved academically has all led up to this point, right? So it basically ties it all up in a neat little bow. Now, if we go further and talk about the importance of a statement of purpose, I mean, I cannot stress this enough. The one thing before I start discussing the points on this particular slide, what I would like to mention is that a lot of people leave the statement of purpose for the very end. They treat it as sort of supplementary to the application, which it is in some ways, but it's also integral because it is the core of your application. And why I say this is because the rest of your application contains your grades. It talks about whatever achievements or medals or certificates or certifications you've gotten, but it doesn't necessarily illustrate or demonstrate why you have pursued those things, right? For instance, if it's a person who's been really good at sports, they've obviously put in the training and the work before they end up getting a medal or winning some sort of accolade. So the same thinking applies here as well, right? You're not going to pursue something just because, right? So the importance of a statement of purpose cannot be, I mean, it's highly understated, but it shouldn't be. And what it does the first thing it does is it sets you apart from other applicants, because look, if you're applying to a great school, other great applicants will also be applying to that great school. So how do you set yourself apart? You really focus on writing a very impactful statement of purpose. The other thing you need to understand is that an SOP gives the admissions panel or the admissions committee an insight into who you are as a person, because that is something they're not going to be able to glean from your grades or from whatever you achieved academically or professionally, right? It also lets them know your goals and your vision. So your vision is more about, okay, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years down the line, and how the education and the degree you are hoping to attain, how will that help you achieve that bigger picture, right? Next, it's also a very unique opportunity for you to convince the admissions panel to favor you over other candidates. Why you? I mean, if one person has achieved a 4.0 and you've also achieved a 4.0, how would they make the call as to who to, let into their institution? So that is where the SOP comes in. You need to build such a case for yourself that they find it difficult to say no. Next, a well-written SOP demonstrates your ability to articulate your thoughts and present yourself well, right? We have seen, and I'm sure, I've come across a few people in my life where, people have like this amazing academic record and they are really well versed in the subject that they have, studied, and all those good things, but they can't speak well, or they can't write well, or they can't present themselves well. And so, they have this personality that's not really well rounded. And great institutions, in fact, all institutions, they're looking for people who are well rounded, because look, sooner or later, what happens is when you enter the professional world, you have to work as a team. You're not just going to be single-handedly doing everything. And if someone is really good, if they have the skills, but they lack, if they don't have that sort of have a handle on their social graces, or they don't know how to carry themselves or speak with other people or present themselves well or their ideas well, then it's really, not going to help, right? So that's why it's important. So it also lets them know, it's basically the first sneak peek into who you are as a person. That's what an SOP essentially does. And lastly, for people who don't have a stellar academic record, which is a great number of people, an SOP can do wonders. How can it do wonders? It can fill the gap for you, right? So let's say you graduated with like a very average GPA or something, but you have taken part in extracurriculars, you have done a lot of volunteer work, you have done maybe a few really great internships. So what you need to do in your SOP is that you need to build upon those experiences. You need to transform them into learning experiences, what you took from those experiences, what parts of your personality became more polished owing to those experiences, stuff like that. That is what will give an admissions panel an insight into who you are, how receptive you are to feedback, right? And how willing you are to change and adapt also. So that is why an SOP is important. Those things are not going to be communicated through your grades or any achievements. Now, these are some elements that I want to talk about that, and obviously you can, I'm sure you can add some more to these, but these are like the essential ones that I feel need to be part of every SOP. So obviously you need to have your academic details in there, right? But be careful not to mention them in a way that makes you come across as pompous. There is something to be said about portraying yourself as a balanced individual also. There's a very fine line between humility and pride, and arrogance rather, right? So be sure to mention your academic pursuits and details, but with humility. Second, we have obviously your professional experience. So this includes your internships, your volunteer work, full-time work, and part-time work. Now, I'd also like to say something additional at this point. A lot of people who write an SOP who are applying for an undergrad might not have professional experience, right? But that's nothing to worry about, because what you can do is you can talk about extracurriculars then that you've done in school. You can talk about any internships. Internships you can easily, do wherever, even after your secondary schooling is over. That's not a problem. Volunteer work, again, is open to you. And full-time and part-time work obviously comes much later, right? Next up, you talk about your goals. So goals obviously are short and long-term. Short-term goals are obviously more immediate. Long-term goals are more about your vision and where you see yourself a few years down the line. So you need to sit down and literally, take it from me. When you talk about your goals, immediately, I'm sure some things must be coming to your mind right now as I'm speaking, right? But when you're writing an SOP, you need to really list down what your short-term goals are, what your long-term goals are, because you don't want to firstly muddle them up, because they will, like, if they're not clear in your head, it's going to reflect in the same way on your SOP. Okay. And make sure that your goals, whatever they are aligned with what program you are aiming to pursue, right? Because that is what you're going to be mentioning in your SOP. That is the end goal of the SOP, right? So that, and then the next thing you need to do is you need to mention the reasons why you're applying to the institution in question, right? Obviously, maybe you've done, excuse me, maybe if you're, for instance, you want to study education, right? But there are lots of great institutions with great programs, excuse me. So you want to really, maybe there's a professor whose work you've been following. Maybe there's, like the people who graduated for their program, maybe they're doing great things, Maybe you've networked with them and you're like, wow, I would like to be a graduate of the same school or the same program and study with the same professors, and with the same like-minded colleagues. So something more meaningful. You can't just say, I want to, like your institution ranks, and if they're aware of their rank, they want to know what your personal reasons are to apply to the institution in question, right? Then you go on to extracurricular activities. Like I mentioned, this is going to be especially helpful when you are writing an SOP as an undergrad, when you don't have professional experience. So extracurriculars, obviously, in fact, I sometimes also would say that volunteer work can be categorized as extracurricular activities because it's something you're doing apart from just going to school and taking classes, right? But yeah, I would encourage you to definitely rack them up. A lot of people don't pay that much attention to extracurriculars, but they hold a lot of weight, and they shine a very unique kind of light in an SOP. Next, okay, this is a very important one. People usually avoid talking about failures in an SOP, and I understand why. We all know why that is. But they are very, very important to mention, but not just for the sake of mentioning them and owning them, right? You need to mention your failures in a way that you talk about what they made you learn, right? Mentioning your failures is very important. It will also tell the admissions committee, like, this is a person who's willing to learn. They are not afraid of taking risks, because obviously when you fail, sometimes it is often the result of having taken a risk, right? So definitely mention your failures. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. Hopefully, you'll have more achievements rather than failures. But mention maybe one. Really think about what failure made you learn. Maybe you started an entrepreneurial venture, when COVID was happening, for instance, as many people did, for whatever reason. And maybe you did something like that, and if it didn't do well, then mention why it didn't do well and what you learned from it and what you took from that and what you're not going to repeat, like what mistakes you're not going to repeat in the future if you take on such a project or such a a venture in the future, right? Second, okay, next up we have published works and papers. Now obviously this doesn't apply to everyone, like it didn't apply to me. I didn't but people who are, for instance, working in education or development or anything, any niche or any industry where you do have published works and papers, scientists, for instance, right? It obviously will add a lot of weight to your SOP. Again, you want to mention why, like what journal you were published in, and you want to maybe talk a little bit about the journal also. In case someone doesn't know, right? This point is also very closely tied to a point I want to make later about using jargon in your SOP. So I'll touch upon that in a while. And lastly, we talk about our interests. Okay. Now, again, when I say we talk about our interests, I don't mean just mention, oh, I like to cycle or stuff. If it's aligned with what you are studying, excellent. If it's not, and if you just want to portray yourself in a way that you come across as a well-balanced, well-rounded individual, then just mention it, like, in a way that you're not taking the focus away from the other very important elements from your SOP, right? Balance is key. How to write a great SOP. Okay, this is not rocket science. And there's a reason why I've kept this slide so brief, because it's literally these 3 stages, right? You have to plan it, you have to write a draft, and then you have to review that draft, and then it's ready for submission. What a lot of people end up doing is leaving the SOP for the 11th hour. They don't think about what they're going to write. They just be like, okay, yeah, we're going to write it. It's just something we just have to talk about ourselves, right? So what's the big deal? No, that is a grave sin, if you ask me. Because again, like I said earlier, an SOP is what's going to set you apart. Why would you let this opportunity go by just treating it as something you have to do? Because, if I don't write it, my application will be incomplete. That's not the way to approach it. You need to make sure that you give it the time it requires. Because look, there's so much that's going to be happening in the background. You're going to be busy with other aspects and sections of your SOP as well. So you don't want to leave this for the last minute. Take it from me. start planning it. You know how I mentioned earlier on in this session that, when you're thinking about your goals, you want to list them down and then further subcategorize them according to short-term goals and long-term goals. This is what you want to do. You really need to have a decluttered mind and really write down everything that you want to be part of your SOP. Obviously, you can refer to the elements that I mentioned in the last slide, but that's the idea. You have to give it time. So plan it, right? You can very briefly write down the points you want to make, and then you elaborate on that, on those points, right? So that's the writing a draft part. So that's phase 2. When you write a draft, you will obviously be making a lot of edits also as you go, because you write a first draft and then you edit that or proofread it and be like, okay, maybe I don't want to add that story in there. Maybe I want to switch it with this live story because it makes more of an impact. That is all going to be at your discretion. But yeah, so the writing a draft phase also has several phases, right? And you want to make sure that you are putting something amazing out there. The last step after all of this editing and proofreading and overhauling is done, you want to review your final draft. Now, this review stage is also critical, but it's not, it's more about, it's going to be focusing on how you polish your statement of purpose, okay? Rarely have I met an individual who's been like, oh, when I was reviewing my SOP, I completely changed it. That doesn't happen unless you've decided to pursue a completely different program, for instance, for whatever reason. But again, that's a rarity. So just make sure to give it ample time. I remember when I was writing my SOP, I think I gave it a month. Like I started writing week 1, but then, things happen and then you can't go back to it and revisit it. And also, so all of those pockets of time that I utilized over a month or 3 weeks, maybe I would say, then I finally was satisfied with the result, right? Okay, like this is what I'm going to send. Also, one very important thing I want to mention here is that now, because I write and edit for a living, I'm constantly flummoxed by one thing, which is that when you are writing something, you need to look at it with fresh eyes, right? I'm sure some of you must know what that means. So basically, when you are done writing something, you can't immediately review it. Why? Because your eyes there's a higher chance that you might miss mistakes or, incorrect things that exist in your first draft or copy. So you don't want to take that risk. You want to write a draft, sleep on it, revisit it the next day. Okay. So this is why it ends up eating up a lot of time also, right? Do not rush it. It is not a rush job. Please do yourself a favor. This is your application. It's your future on the line. You want to give it the time it deserves. Right. Now, to sort of wrap up and condense everything I have mentioned up till now, you want to focus in your SOP, obviously, you want to focus on your learning experiences. Do not simply list down your achievements, because if you simply list down your achievements, like I said, you might come across as just someone who just did those things. If you don't attach meaning to those things, then they're just going to be a list of achievements, right? They're not going to give the admissions panel an insight into why you did those things. So focus on the learning experiences, right? And also be sure to mention any failures, like I said, without overdoing it, obviously, because you want to make it seem like you're a well-balanced personality. Do not exceed the word count. A lot of people keep asking this question, can we exceed it? Or, you can write a lesser word count in some cases, but again, something I would not recommend, but let me come back to that. Exceeding the word count is just not okay, right? Because you have to keep in mind the fact that everyone who's applying is adhering to that same word count. So if they can project themselves and present themselves in that word count, you should be able to do the same thing, right? You can be smart about it. So when you reach the reviewing, and this is just a professional tip on the side, I hope it helps you. What you can do is when you are in the reviewing stage, right? When you then obviously in the review stage, you're also editing a lot of things out. You're condensing phrases. You are removing things, omitting sentences that seem like fluff or redundancies. So in that, maybe you can, maybe you come across one or two such experiences that you've really gone into detail about when it's not necessary. As long as whatever you learned as a result of that experience comes through, I feel like that gets the job done, right? So don't worry if you are exceeding the word count, especially when you're writing the first draft. I would suggest do not focus on, oh, I just have 1,000 words and I need to figure that out in this first draft. No, that is what the review stage is for. Okay, you don't want to write your first draft with this limit in mind, because you won't be able to get everything on paper. You won't be focusing on being authentic and genuine. You'll be focusing more on the limit that you have. Okay, so don't worry, that is what the review stage is for. Next, do not use a thesaurus. Okay, now if you're confused reading this, let me tell you why I said this specifically. Now, a lot of people think that when you're writing a personal statement or a statement of purpose, letter of intent, whatever you want to call it, you have to impress the admissions panel. Yes, that's true, but that doesn't mean you use words that do not come naturally to you, right? And it doesn't mean that you use a thesaurus on every word, because a rich vocabulary is not going to make you sound smart or genuine. Okay. What you have to do is you need to make sure your phrasing is authentically you. Now, I'm not saying, unleash all sorts of colloquialisms and be very, very like casual in your phrasing. No, that's not what I'm saying. You have to be formal, you have to be polite, you have to be dignified, but that doesn't necessarily come from a rich vocabulary, right? This is something that people do end up doing. Like they'll be like, okay, we've written our draft and we're fine with it, and now let's sort of replace some words with smart sounding words, whatever that means. You do not want to do that. Also, when your statement of purpose is being read by the admissions panel, trust me, this is their job. They look at so many statements of purpose day in and day out at the beginning of every admission season, that they can sense if someone is being genuine or not, if someone's being authentic or not, if someone's being real or not, right? You don't want to take that risk. Just be yourself. If you don't trust your own reviewing skills, have a trusted party look at it. Maybe a friend who's a good writer, maybe a student counselor at your school. That's a really good resource. Tell them this is important and why you're writing it, and this was your aim. This is what you are aim to achieve by writing this SOP, and they'll help you polish it up. There's a lot of friendly people out there also. And obviously, if you need more tips about this, or I'm hoping there are some questions in the Q&A box. I do see 6 blinking there. Okay, the fourth point is avoid jargon. Now, I mentioned this in an earlier slide as well. Now, you don't want to use too many technical terms, okay? Because technical terms sort of can confuse whoever's reading your SOP, because they might not be well versed with the industry, okay, or whatever niche it is that whatever niche program it is that you're applying to, for instance. So if you do, use it sparingly. I'm not saying completely don't use it. Avoid it as much as possible, because clarity is your friend in an SOP, okay? Clarity and conciseness. These are the 2 things you should really, really focus on. Okay, you want more meat, you don't want fluff. Very important. So definitely you can use jargon, but not too much. And if you do use it, I would recommend, please offer some sort of explanation or insight into what it means in a very, very brief, concise definition sort of way, so that whoever's reading it obviously immediately understands what you're trying to say. Lastly, do not lie. And this goes without saying. And people don't lie on purpose, or it's not like they're like, yeah, we're just going to make ourselves seem whoever we're not or whatever, right? It's not about that. It's more like um, people really want to go above and beyond in portraying themselves in a way that really impresses everyone, right? But be sure to separate fact from fiction, because again, like I said, the admissions committee, they look at so many statements of purpose, and they have a very trained eye when it comes to detecting um, people who are not authentic, right? You want to be true to yourself. You want to be authentic. You want to have that. Want to have your own voice, and you want to make sure that you impress them by being you, right? Who doesn't want that? That does bring me to the end of my presentation, but I see some questions. Let me answer those. Right. Okay. So Taimur Hashim has asked, please tell how should we write a good SOP? Like we should introduce ourselves first, then the main body, etc., etc. Kindly elaborate. Hi Taimur, thanks for the question. Yes, definitely. So basically, you know how you write an essay, you introduce yourself, and then you go into your achievements and your qualifications. So that's your professional achievements and academic achievements and any extracurriculars. Now, it doesn't mean that your SOP has to have 3 paragraphs. So like, your intro and your body and your conclusion, no. So you can have your intro, a very short, nice intro, right? And then you go into the main chunk of, the main body, so to speak, right? So then you talk about your extracurriculars perhaps in one paragraph, and then you go on to your professional achievements, because all of it cannot be clubbed together, right? So assign a separate paragraph to every different kind of, or every different category of achievement. So talk about extracurriculars and hobbies and interests in one. Then you want to talk about your educational qualifications, education and academic qualifications in one. Then you want to talk about your professional experiences in one and what you learned there, right? What you can do is also you can tie some of the skills you've picked up while doing these things. For instance, if you played sports in school, that teaches you a lot of team building, right? And it teaches you about teamwork and how to exist with other people and how to communicate with other people. So how that skill has helped you in your professional life. You can mention that. That is very, very insightful, and it's something that admissions panels they love to read, because that is exactly the kind of thing they're looking for. So I hope that answers your question. Then we have Ahmad Asad Janjua, who has asked me what's the difference between a personal statement and an SOP. Okay, so Ahmad, good question. There is actually no difference. Some people call it a statement of purpose. Some people call it a personal statement. Some people also call it a letter of intent, I've heard. So there is no difference. However, what I would advise you to do is, if whatever you're applying asks for a personal statement and an SOP, then maybe there's a difference in that particular organization or institution. So you might want to ask them. Generally, what they do is that they do give you sometimes they do give you a brief as to what a personal statement should have, what an SOP should have, if they do categorize these two differently where they are, right? So that is there. I hope that helped. Okay, I have an anonymous attendee asking me, what is a draft? Okay, so a draft is basically your first write-up of your SOP, right? I mentioned you should review your draft. I keep using that term. So that is your first attempt. You've written your first SOP, your first draft, your first edition of your SOP. That is basically a draft, okay? Okay, we also have Gordon Balasai. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. You've mentioned, okay, you asked a bunch of questions. How important is grammar and language? Very important. That is what the review stage is for. Your second question is, can someone else review your SOP? Is it positive? yes, but only at the review stage. Or if someone knows you really well and you trust them to, understand your goal, your end goal of that SOP, then sure. I personally don't believe in that, because who knows me better than myself? So if I'm not okay with my SOP, there's nothing someone else can tell me that would add any significant, make any significant difference to it, right? But for the review stage, definitely, because, people can pinpoint cosmetic errors like, okay, maybe proofread it for you, or, change some spellings around, right? Can ChatGPT use? No, ChatGPT cannot be used to write SOPs. ChatGPT is AI. That is not you. You need to write your SOP. We all know ChatGPT is, obviously it's a marvel of, it's a fantastic tool, but for SOPs, no, it's just your brain and your typing or your penmanship at work. That is all. Okay, that is done. Yasin has asked us, should I write my physical condition in SOP? In 2017, I lost my arm in an incident. I'm so sorry to hear that. Does it impact my selection, or as I'm applying for the Hubert Humphrey Fellowship? In SOP, should I write the challenges I have faced and overcome them after disability? Or would this be useless to write? Not at all, Yasin. I think that is definitely something, because this is all inclusive. Okay, these scholarships are for everyone. If you have a disability, or if you've undergone some tragic incident and it's left you, physically compromised in any way, you are encouraged to apply, and you should definitely mention it on your SOP and write it with a spin. Basically focus on what it has made you learn, what it has come to really made you appreciate about life, and why you want to study what you're aiming to study. Okay, so I would definitely encourage you to apply. I have a question. Should I write about my research experience thesis in the SOP? This is from Muhammad Huzaifa Siddiqui. Huzaifa, yes, definitely do that, because like I said, it is an achievement, and you want to elaborate on it, especially if it aligns with whatever program it is that you are aiming to pursue. Razia Mubarak has asked me, what do you recommend, that we write the first draft and then read a bunch of sample SOPs, then we edit our draft, or any other method? I would suggest, okay, I am not for reading sample SOPs, to be honest, because I feel like it clutters my brain. Your first draft, you should write with a clear head, like this is you. And, Razia, so when you're thinking about your goals and your vision and your academic achievements and your qualifications and all of that, it should be authentically 100% you, right? If you want to read sample SOPs after that first draft, sure, but only if if you can walk away from that without it raising more questions in your head, because you don't want to replicate other people. Everyone's experiences are different, and an SOP essentially elaborates on and reflects your personal experiences, right? Someone's asked me, can you get a recording of this? Yes, there will be a recording of this, I believe. Umara will, I'll leave that question for Umara at the end.
Yes, the recording will be available on the USEFP YouTube page as soon as it's ready to be on there.
Perfect. Thank you, Amara. Okay, hi, you've asked me how many pages I recommend for an SOP. Again, like I said, whatever institution you're applying to will have a word count mentioned. So just follow that. Then we have right. Someone else has asked how to explain gap years in SOP. Saad Khan has asked this question. Saad, whatever you were doing in your gap years, I'm assuming it was something meaningful that you were doing, and why you break. So just mention that again, just be authentic. Maybe you took a gap to pursue another field just to see what would pan out or something, right? Whatever it might be, to focus on what you took away from that. So just be confident in that, and it will come up the admissions plan, right? A cover letter and SOP, two different things. Okay, so a cover letter and an SOP are two different things, because a cover letter is something that SOP is something you write to basically enroll in an institution to study.
Hello. Unaiza, are you there? Hi everyone, Unaiza will be back. I think some internet issue is happening. That's why the video has stopped. So there are so many questions that you guys have asked. We still have a few 15 to 18 minutes to answer those questions. I am trying to reach out to Unaiza again so that she can come back and answer your questions. Unaiza, are you there? So while Unaiza comes back, I can take your questions a bit for that time. Once she's back, she's going to start taking your questions. So Shobha Kumari has asked, can you tell me the names of any people that will help us review our SOP if we want a professional look? So Shobha, anybody who you know that is capable or who has a good grip on the language, I think would be somebody, it can be your friend, it can be your teacher, it can be somebody who is already a Fulbright alumni, if you know any. So I think that would be somebody that you should go to and ask for a review. But there's no professional service that we know of that does this for anybody. Anonymous attendee, how many participants are there? Oh, it's okay. Great. Okay, can we start first paragraph with technical research questions like a research proposal? So it's, yes, it's not a research proposal. It's basically what you actually want to do. I think Unaiza would be the better person to answer this. Unaiza, you're still muted.
I am back. Sorry about that.
So yeah, so I started answering some of the questions because there's so many questions that are to be answered here. And we still have 15 minutes, so over to you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I don't see any questions in the box.
Okay. I think if they might, why don't I ask you the questions and then
Sure,
you can...
sure, that will work. Thank you.
Okay, So this question is important. Ahmed Asajanjua, can we start the first paragraph with technical research questions like a research proposal?
No, Ahmed, you want to first start by introducing yourself, right? You can definitely, because from this, what I'm able to make from your question is you're asking if you can talk about a research proposal you did in your SOP. You can definitely do that, but you shouldn't start your SOP with that.
Okay, anonymous attendee, I missed out on including in curriculars during my undergraduate because of COVID quite a bit. However, I do have a lot of extracurriculars from my intermediate and high school. Does information from that far back count?
I think you can use it because the whole world went through that pandemic, and if we were all shut down and not able to pursue things we wanted to pursue. So definitely mention that as a reason. The admissions panel will have a soft corner for that. Don't worry, because we're all aware of what COVID did. So don't worry about that.
So I also have a question which I think might be very, very relevant right now. Could you just explain what's the difference between an undergraduate essay and a master's or PhD SOP? Because I think people are confusing those two strands at this point. Yeah.
Right. So when you are applying for your undergrad and you are writing an SOP for that, obviously there will be a world of difference as if you were applying for a postgrad program. The main reason for that is because when you're applying for your undergrad, you do not have enough professional experience. You are straight out of secondary school, and all you have at best are maybe some extracurricular activities and maybe some volunteer work hours, right? But when you're applying for a postgrad, the assumption is that, okay, so during your undergrad, maybe you might have done some internships, or maybe you took on some part-time work, and that all counts as work experience, which can also obviously be translated as learning experiences to the admissions panel, which is why your postgrad SOP will reflect those and make for a more meaningful essay. Does that answer your question?
So anonymous attendee, are cover letter and SOP two different things?
No. Okay. So I think I did answer this question, but they are two different things. A cover letter is, it supplements your CV, and you write a cover letter when you are applying for a job. An SOP is something you apply for when an SOP is something you write when you're applying for a position at an institution as a student. So that's the main difference.
So Aisha Ahsan is saying, can we develop a story and then slowly build it into an essay? As a literature major, I'm good at developing a story. So is that okay?
This is from Aisha. Okay. Aisha, the thing is that I can't say yes or no to you at this point, because I don't know what kind of story. Like, are you talking about a fictional narrative or something? Because you did mention you're a literature major. What I would say is that an SOP is your life story, right? And you will eventually be taking certain incidents that you went through and building upon them. So it does sort of come across as a story if you write it well in that way. But I would need more information about your particular question. So if you would like to send a follow-up, please do.
Okay, so Gordon, I think you have already answered his question. He was just thanking you. So how much or how the length of words would require for SOP? Oh, you mean to say what would be the word limit? Yeah.
Yeah, I think universities mention that on their page, like on the application. It may differ for some. I'm not entirely sure, but generally it can be around 1,500 words. So, but you want to check with the institution that you're applying to, because they might have a different word count.
Okay, so this question I'll just answer. Does USEFP help in reviewing and getting back feedback for SOP for Fulbright scholarships? No, we don't do that, especially for Fulbright scholarship, because it's a merit-based scholarship. And as a policy, we want, because if you review one SOP, we'll have to review everybody's SOP. So it's better to get it reviewed by a friend or everything. But the USEFP does not provide any services for that. Gordon, what should be the tone of our SFP, whether it should be story-like or as usual as essay, and should we put our feelings while writing?
I would suggest, okay, so like I said to Aisha a while ago, you want to look, eventually your SOP will take the shape of a story because you're talking about yourself and what life experiences you went through to reach whatever point you are at, right? So when you mention story, that is the storytelling approach in terms of an SOP. It comes with its limits, obviously. Like for instance, I would suggest also do not try to be funny in your SOP. You don't want to showcase your personality in a way that it comes across as very, very casual. You still need to adopt a very formal tone in your SOP, and you need to come across as someone who has learned from their life experiences and the professional experiences and is now very seriously aiming to pursue a certain program.
In this regard, would it be important to mention that work experience and knowing the program that they're applying to is also very important at the master's level as compared to the undergraduate level, where you can actually talk about your story?
Yeah, I would say that, because at the undergraduate level, I think a lot of people are still confused as to what they want to do with life. So at the postgrad level, that's exactly what I meant when I said earlier that you will have more meat in your SOP because you will have gone through more experiences and you will have a clearer idea of where you want to be in the next 5 years, right? Your goals will be very well defined.
Okay, so an anonymous attendee, how should we explain switching the fields if I'm switching my field?
So switching your fields is always going to come with your personal reasoning, right? Like if someone is switching from, I don't know, from dentistry to writing, right? They will have a good reason for doing that. So you need to make sure your reasons make sense and they resonate with people, like with the admissions panel. Like you can't just say, I took a gap year because I didn't feel like working. That's not going to sit well with anyone, right? It casts a very bad light on you. So you want to make sure whatever you did in that gap year or whatever reason you had for switching your careers made sense to you, right? So just be authentic and make sure you convince yourself before you convince other people. That I would advise that.
Oh, okay, anonymous attendee, for those writing for Fulbright, is it important to mention universities? What if someone has left the option blank in the application? Adding universities is a plus point or not?
So I think you're referring to that section of the Fulbright application where you should mention your preferences and programs, right? Definitely add that in. When I was applying, I think it was mandatory. And why wouldn't you, right? Because you're applying for such a life-changing scholarship. You should have some institutions shortlisted and some programs shortlisted so that the Fulbright committee, when they do, hand you that scholarship, they will also have an idea of, they'll be able to better meet your goals, basically, right? So definitely add those in.
Okay, great. So Mohammed Huzaifa, should I write about how I got interested in the academic field I'm applying to?
Again, very vague question because I don't have enough context. But if you feel like it aligns with the program you want to apply to, then definitely add that in.
Anonymous attendee, what is the admission committee looking for? How do they check and evaluate?
They are looking for authenticity. Okay, this is a very can be a very long drawn response. But again, it depends from institution to institution. I don't know what your major is, what your intended major is. So I would obviously need some more context if I were to give a more targeted answer, but they are looking for authenticity.
Okay, so Aisha, how do I tackle a gap in my academics due to me going on an exchange program? My university is delaying my degree, so it is all right to mention this sort of background?
I think so, yeah, because it's not in your control. It's one of those exceptional cases, right? So definitely mention that.
Anonymous attendee, can we write about community service?
yeah, that actually will reflect really well on you. And they're always looking for, things that you do for other people. So any volunteer work, make sure you put it in there without overdoing it, without embellishing it. Just be very genuine and honest.
What if someone, anonymous attendee, what if someone is not, does not have extracurricular activities? Does it affect the selection process?
I would say if you're applying for a postgrad degree, you should have some extracurriculars under your belt. You should have some internships under your belt by that time. So if you don't, I would suggest start working towards that. Make that a goal. To like dedicate some time to that, definitely, because it will reflect poorly.
Anonymous attendee, if someone has published some poems and essay at university level magazines, do we have to mention these in our SOP?
Does it align with the like if you're applying for a if you want to major in poetry or writing, then yeah, but other than that, you can make a mention of it, but just in passing. You don't want to elaborate a lot on it. Maybe just mention the publication and what the readership is, because that will basically let the admissions panel know if it's a popular publication or not, right?
Muzammil Hussain, should I write about my background, because I come from not a very good financial background, and I have my education from government institutions. Would it help? Obviously, there will be a difference in my level of thinking and competitiveness.
You know what, Muzammil? That's a very good question, and I think that is that's good introspection on your part. I would suggest do not mention it so blatantly, like I come from such a background, but do mention this as something that you want to work on, right? These are some of your not weaknesses, but there's some parts of your personality that you feel make you more receptive to really appreciating the good things that come your way, really grabbing onto opportunities that you get to grow and move forward in life, right? So that's the fine line. You mention it through those experiences and through whatever progressive thinking that you have been able to adopt due to that. Okay.
So one of the last few questions, anonymous attendee, I am high functioning as Asperger's. Can I mention that? I am thinking if it affects my selection, but I have adapted so well that it doesn't affect my performance, rather maybe increases it.
That's amazing to hear. Definitely do not shy away from anything like that. I would definitely say put it in there. That's you. That's part of who you are. Why would you want to not mention it? Definitely go for it.
Okay, Huda Rauf, would it be a good idea to explain why there's relatively lower grades B in one's transcript, A's and B's, when all other grades are either A's and A minuses?
Again, I would need some more context because I need, when you think of an SOP, you need to think in terms of a big picture situation. So if you're telling me you got grades, if you got bad grades in English, for instance, and you're applying to a publishing program, then yeah, you need to maybe mention a reason. But if you're applying to an engineering program, then maybe you don't need to highlight that. I hope that helps.
Sure. Maybe this is the last question we'll take. In the case of Fulbright, how can we explain our interest in a specific institute? Is it all right to focus on study in US in general?
Wait, so that's the Fulbright application or an SOP?
For Fulbright application, SOP for Fulbright application, I think he's saying.
No, I would suggest don't do that. Just focus on the program that you are interested to pursue, because there is a section on the application dedicated to your preferences pertaining to institutions. So use that section for that. Do not mention a particular institution in the SOP.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered, around 40 more questions. But Unaiza, I think thank you so much for such a interesting and very, very candid session. I'm sure our audience have benefited greatly from this. Also, just wanted to highlight that the recording of this session will be uploaded on the USEFP YouTube page, and in I think next few days. So please do look out for that. And if you want updated information, please follow us on our Facebook pages and Instagram and Twitter pages. Thank you so much for participating in our session today. Thank you, Unaiza, for doing this session for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope it helped everyone, and I look forward to doing such sessions again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.